For decades, organizations treated cybersecurity as a structural afterthought. We built isolated walls, firewalls, antivirus software, standalone servers, and assumed they would hold. But treating defense exclusively as a technical barrier, disconnected from the core business, practically guarantees a breach. The modern threat landscape moves far too fast for static defense. When an adversary uses automation and artificial intelligence to probe for weaknesses, a reactive checklist can no longer keep up. The National Institute of Standards and Technology updated its framework to solve this. NIST CSF 2.0 shifts the focus toward desired outcomes. It interrogates the specific objective of the security measure rather than the brand of the hardware. It creates a common language. It bridges the gap between the server room and the boardroom, translating dense technical telemetry into actionable risk metrics that executives can actually use. To see how this works, we have to architect the CSF 2.0 ecosystem from first principles, building it up to show exactly how it forms an adaptive risk engine. That construction begins with the framework's newest and most critical mechanism, the govern function. An IT department spending millions without aligning to the organization's legal and operational realities operates as a blind cost center. Aligned security is a strategic asset built for survivability. Look at this central hub, govern, the brain of the framework. Executive strategy, specifically risk appetite, flows down, while operational telemetry flows back up. Zooming into the first node, organizational context, we locate where the mission is defined. Security architecture must reflect the business's core legal obligations. This excerpt from the control documentation shows exactly how that mapping occurs. Here, Control GV.OC.01 mandates that understanding the entity's mission directs the cyber risk management, tying directly to established international frameworks like COBIT 5. From that context, we derive the risk management strategy. Because an organization has finite resources, it is mathematically impossible to protect every asset equally. Leadership must explicitly define the risk appetite, the exact threshold of financial and operational loss the board is willing to accept. Engineers use this threshold to dictate where they deploy the heaviest defenses. When those thresholds are met, the business needs predefined responses. Looking at Control GV.RM.04, the strategy dictates whether to mitigate, accept, share, or transfer the risk. Shifting responsibility through a public cloud provider contract is a strategic business decision, not an IT configuration. Because modern businesses rely heavily on these external vendors, the supply chain component integrates third-party dependencies into the core strategy. A compromised cloud provider or logistics partner acts as a primary threat factor. Finally, strategy requires accountability. Control GV.RR.01 explicitly demands the appointment of a specific leadership official to report on and take responsibility for these cyber risks. Without this govern core firmly established, technical teams are left guessing. They waste resources defending irrelevant attack vectors while leaving critical business dependencies totally exposed. With the strategic core set, the framework pushes outward into the preventative layer, forming two new arcs: identify and protect. Identify establishes a non-negotiable axiom in cybersecurity: you cannot protect an asset if you do not know it exists. Asset management requires dynamically mapping complex data flows across both internal networks and external cloud environments, moving far beyond maintaining a simple spreadsheet of corporate laptops. Once identified, those assets undergo continuous risk assessment. Vulnerabilities are calculated and prioritized based on the risk appetite established in the govern core. Those priorities dictate the shape of the protect function, the active containment layer enforcing the boardroom's rules in the digital environment. This involves identity and access management, executing the principle of least privilege. Users receive only the exact permissions necessary to execute their specific tasks, severely limiting the lateral movement of any attacker. It ensures data security through automated encryption, both when data sits on a server and when it travels across a network, building out infrastructure resilience based on a zero-trust architecture. Identify and protect operate as the physical manifestations of executive policy, transforming legal requirements into hard network boundaries. But preventative shells eventually fail. The framework operates on the assumption of breach, requiring the final three functions: detect, respond, and recover to complete the wheel. To understand how they interact, we have to look at the timeline of an active crisis. The first step is detect. Through continuous monitoring and behavioral analysis, the system identifies the exact moment a routine log event escalates into an anomaly. That trigger launches the respond function. The containment plan executes, demanding immediate coordination internally as well as with external stakeholders, legal counsel, and supply chain partners. In modern environments, human reaction time is inadequate. Automated containment tools must immediately isolate infected nodes to cut off the threat before it spreads. Once contained, the recover function begins. The objective here is returning operations to a secure new normal, rather than carelessly flipping the infected systems back on. A critical step is verifying asset integrity. Before restoring from backups, engineers must mathematically prove the backup itself isn't carrying a dormant payload, avoiding a catastrophic reinfection loop. True resilience is measured by the speed and safety of the recovery, and the ability to absorb a hit without repeating past mistakes. How does an organization measure execution? We use a radar chart to track operational maturity. On the left, the current profile, a Tier 2 risk-informed state. Audits are manual, budgets react to past events, and departments operate in silos. On the right is the target profile, a Tier 4 adaptive state. Budgeting relies on predictive models, and security dictates culture. The space between them is the gap analysis. This forms an operational bridge, translating technical deficiencies into a financially justified action plan. Consider supply chain oversight. A Tier 2 organization sends out static, yearly security questionnaires. A Tier 4 organization uses continuous API integrations to monitor its vendors' security posture in real time. In detection, a Tier 2 team manually reviews server logs after an alert. A Tier 4 team deploys AI-driven threat hunting to find adversaries before the alert even triggers. Operating at Tier 4 empowers an enterprise to act rapidly. With highly manageable risk controls, DIC can safely deploy innovations like generative AI applications well ahead of their competitors. Organizations that reach Tier 4 convert their security posture into a measurable competitive advantage. The NIST framework creates a living, continuous feedback loop. The system continuously outputs key risk indicators. Metrics like mean time to detect or supplier risk index translate millions of technical actions into a precise measure of business health. This engine elevates the Chief Information Security Officer's position. The conversation shifts from requesting arbitrary IT budgets for obscure hardware to presenting strategic, data-backed risk management cases. The continuous telemetry from the technical layers feeds straight back up to the core, dynamically updating the executive risk appetite based on ground truth. Reaching that Tier 4 adaptability ensures an organization can absorb, analyze, and survive highly turbulent threat environments without losing its operational footing. Instead of breaking under pressure, the digital barriers adapt as fast as the attacks evolve, neutralizing threats instantly. In a mature NIST CSF 2.0 ecosystem, cybersecurity integrates directly into the organization's operational DNA, ensuring